Good morning, everyone. It's interesting. Mason and I have met face-to-face maybe, a half hour in the last 2 years. All the rest of our communication, we may have been in the same room, or all the rest of it's social media. Mason knows what triathlons I'm competing in, what I'm doing on the weekends, what dogs I've hiked with, things like that. People in this room are also doing that as well. You know what? That's the media of Scott. And that may sound a little arrogant, but everybody in here is a media company. Some have bigger audiences and some of them have smaller audiences. And you can have a lot of power as a media company, whether you realize it or not. People can destroy reputations of a media company pretty quickly, or of a brand pretty quickly, or they can build it up. So that's some of the things I want to talk about today. And I think that here's the truth facing marketers. There's content and media surplus. I see pictures all the time. You'll see weddings. You see it now with funerals. People are texting in the middle of funerals, weddings, everything else. They're looking at content. I'm at a wedding, and there's a guy streaming a football game, and my wife's over there like, don't do that. And reality is, stuff is coming from everywhere. It's 24-hour news. They can't come up with enough content. Fox 2 here locally has 11 hours of content they have to fill in the morning. You know what? They need to entertain people for 11 hours every day and come up with creative content. Twitter breaks news stories all the time, way before traditional media does it. Facebook stuff starts trickling in there. There's talk radio. They can't figure out enough ways to criticize each other in that. You look at Karen Hoffman, what she's doing with her Gateway to Dreams thing. I know all about it. I've been in the facility, but she's doing a great job using traditional media to get her story out there. There's all kinds of cool opportunities out there, and it's just figuring out how to get it out there. I've been thinking about this, and I talked about this in E4E meeting, and I went and listened to the author of this book, Your Brand, the Next Media Company. The book wasn't out yet. It's recently come out. And in the beginning of it, he talks about there's a difference between being a thought leader and a do leader. Thought leaders can tell you what you should be doing, but often have no practical real-world experience translating thought into action. Do leaders, on the other hand, are seasoned professionals who base their advice on what they've accomplished and failed at, a huge value add for any organization. I think what Mason was talking about was, okay, you can be a thought leader, you can talk about this stuff all day long, but if you're not doing stuff, then guess what? You're in trouble. I have an editor that works for me. He was editor for 6 years at Small Business Monthly. I talked to him about writing because I'm not the best writer. That's not my forte. I do a lot of strategy work. He's like, I was an awful writer when I first started, and he'll be the first to admit it. He goes, you know what? I get better and better each time, and I'm constantly learning. This is a guy that probably people are like, hey, he still freelances for Feast Magazine, Alive, writes for the Business Journal on a freelance basis. He's a good writer. I think he's a good writer. I hired him. I thought he's a great writer, but internally he's still uncomfortable with his writing ability. And those are the things that I think we have to overcome. Is we have to start creating content and quit worrying about whether it's perfect. Because guess what? It's not going to be perfect, and guess what? You've got to create something new. I think the other opportunity is, or the other challenge we're facing as marketers is we all have attention deficit, and I just did ... because I've already moved on to the next thing. But people are distracted by all the feeds, the news. They forget people are even in the room. They're having conversations. So how do you get people's attention? Mason did a great presentation and had me captivated. If that would have dragged out for 3 or 4 hours, he probably would have lost everybody in the room, and they would have been checking their phones and everything else. So once you start building, so what you have to do is, how am I going to get these people's attention, and how am I going to keep them there? And so I want you to start thinking about circles. We got to start creating circles so you don't lose them. You get them once, and if they never come back. So we got to start thinking about how are we going to keep people coming back. The customer journey is dynamic. Things are changing, and they're running all over the place. And Facebook changes things on the fly. Now they start warning people because people get so upset. Twitter's trying to adapt. Everybody's trying to adapt. Social media, like you talked about, is breaking news stories. When planes are landing on the Hudson River, that was broke on Twitter. Some airlines didn't even have a social media strategy at that time. My wife happens to be friends with the social media director of Southwest Airlines. You ask, how did she meet her? Through Twitter. She said, I have a presentation in St. Louis. I'd like for you to come. She said, great. I have my own plane. You don't have to pay for my airfare. Well, as you get to talking, and they shared, they're an open book with their social media strategy. Those videos, that some of them that go viral, you know who did it? It was a mechanic. He sat there and shot it on his phone. You know what their social media strategy and rule book is? Follow the employee manual. There isn't one. They're like, some of the videos where they're working on engines and things like that, those are some of their most engaged people that are talking about things going on with Southwest Airlines. Yeah, do they get lucky? Do they have a creative team if it's part of their culture? Absolutely. But that's how they keep attention. And then they loop in all the other marketing components. They leverage traditional media. They leverage online media and keep people in the loop. Once you have them there, how do you keep them? Keep thinking about a circle.